We're now recording. Hello, Phil.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm extremely well. It's always nice when someone asks how a doctor is. A little bit of role reversal there, but I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, this is, of course, a complete role reversal because, because in your life as a presenter on BBC Radio Bristol, our roles were reversed two or three times, and you were the one asking me the questions. And this time, I'm going to be able to ask you some questions, Phil.
Well, that's absolutely fine. You fire away, and I shall ask them as honestly as I can.
So first of all, as I said, you had a long stint as a presenter on BBC Radio Bristol. You are also a practicing GP.
Well, I'm in hospital now, actually. So I was a GP for 20 years, and for the last 10, I've worked at the RUH in Bath with paediatric chronic fatigue. So I treat young people with ME, CFS, post-viral fatigue, long COVID, and lots of other illnesses we don't fully understand. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, as if that doesn't sort of keep you fully occupied, you also write the MD column in Private Eye, and on top of all that, you then wrote a book.
Oh gosh, well I'm glad you've got that. You're one of the many thousands of people who've bought the book, so thank you, Joe.
Well, see, because I've been reading sort of Private Eye since about sort of 1975. And in the very first article, you wrote in Private Eye, about COVID. There's this sentence: "Laughter is the best medicine, unless you have syphilis, in which case it's penicillin." And then you went on to say that at that point, there are no effective drugs yet for COVID-19, and the best ways to boost your immune system are not the nonsense new age supplements, but laughter and sex. So,
yes, or possibly both. I think sex should involve lots of laughter.
So, following all that, when I read that, I thought, yes, well, this interview has just got to happen. So, Phil, as you know, it's just the two basic questions. Question number one: what is joy to you? What does joy mean to you?
Gosh, well, without sounding too cliched, I think joy is all about connection. I think human beings are essentially exist to feel part of something bigger, as if we're leaves on a tree. We belong to something bigger. And so that sense of deep connection with person, with place, with pet, requires you to be in the moment. So it does require you to concentrate, to put your screen down and to absolutely focus on what's around you.
Yes.
and to fully absorb the world around you. So it can be something beautiful in nature, it can be a piece of music, but it does require you to attune your senses to whatever's around you and to fill up your senses with the joy of the moment. It also needs, I think, I don't know whether this is an official phrase, but I always talk about being at joy with yourself. So I think you need to be comfortable and relaxed and happy in your own skin. I always say you love yourself, which sounds slightly American, but self-care, I think, begins with self-compassion. So I think often to experience joy, you have to be in that relaxed frame of mind where you enjoy your own company. I think that's really, really important. So I often say to British patients, do you love yourself? And they look rather tentative. And then I say, well, can you do it without using your hands? And they look vaguely disgusted. So I say, do you actually enjoy your own company? Can you disappear inside your head and not mind what you find there? Can you get through an entire evening on your own without 3 bottles of wine and Netflix? And those are interesting questions because I find it a joy sometimes just disappearing inside my own brain. So I can be walking the dogs. I can experience the joy of nature and the beauty around me and sunsets. And I take lots of photos of trees. Or I can get joy just disappearing inside my own head and just ruminating on something that I find particularly puzzling or interesting. So to be in that state, you have to enjoy your own company. And I think generally because life throws all sorts of things at us, and as a doctor, you see people who get all sorts of unlucky and unpleasant illnesses, but the ones who cope best are the ones who've learnt to enjoy their own company. Because if you can enjoy spending time on your own and find joy just being on your own, then everything else is sorted. The bits are extra. I think the third element, I would say, is almost like the knight's move in chess. So if I'm talking about the joy of laughter, which I do a lot, it's something that hits you from the side that you aren't expecting.
Yeah.
So it's a joke. Some jokes you see coming over the hill. It's like you can see this punchline coming, and sometimes people say things that absolutely crack you up, of which probably the funniest was I had a couple who came to see me in their 90s. He'd been married for 70 years, and they came to see me saying they were going to get a divorce. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. You're 94, 93, married for 70 years. Why do you want to get a divorce now? And they said, well, we've been thinking about it for a while, but we wanted to wait until the children were dead. Now, that sort of joke hits you from the side and you don't see it coming. And so there's a certain joy, I think, also in the unexpected. So I think those are the elements, but I think being at joy with yourself is an essential precondition to feeling joy. And a bit like happiness, people often say that, there's that famous phrase that happiness is the only good and the time to be happy is now. And the way to be happy is to make others so. I think that's similar with joy. The way often to have joy is to give it to others, or to appreciate it when somebody gives it to you. I mean, you can say thank you to a butterfly or a Labrador for giving you joy, and they may not fully appreciate your thanks. But I think joy also comes with gratitude. So I think when you experience joy or you give joy, then I think gratitude is the second bit of like a jigsaw, they fit together. Yep. And they reinforce each other. So having joy and then having gratitude for the thing that gave you joy are the two essential sides of the same coin, I think.
How amazing. How amazing. I have no doubt, Phil, that patients, when they come to see you, they go away having experienced some joy. And, that is just fantastic.
There used to be we rather disparagingly used to talk about the placebo effect. So the placebo effect is the idea that your beliefs and expectations can actually influence medical outcomes. So we know that, if you give people a sugar tablet that has no active ingredients at all, if people think it's going to cure their stomach ulcers, it can cure their stomach ulcers. It is quite extraordinary, the power of the mind over the body. But I actually think the placebo effect is more the doctor as a drug. I think as a doctor, unless patients come away from a consultation feeling a bit better, then you're in the wrong game. So you can absolutely freak people out and make them very anxious. Or even in difficult circumstances, you can try without offering too much false reassurance, because we all know we're going to die eventually. I think you should be able to make people feel a bit better for seeing you. And I think that's the essential prerequisite of working in healthcare, is to like people and to try and make them feel better for interacting with you. Yeah.
And you kind of answered this second question, but it is so how important is it to you? And from everything you've been saying, it's incredibly important to you both personally and professionally. But
it is. But you also need to remind yourself of that. So it's interesting that the range of jobs that I do. So I do some doctoring, and I do some comedy and public speaking, and I do some sort of fictional writing, and then I do serious investigative journalism for private eye. And the trouble with the serious investigative journalism is you're trying to catch people out, you're trying to expose wrongdoing, you're turning over stones, you're asking difficult questions, you're being a whistleblower. And that often makes people angry, and you've got to get your facts right, otherwise you get sued sometimes. And so in that sort of mindset, where you're trying to be the fearless truth seeker, there can be an absence of joy if you're not careful. And sometimes in that sort of job, you need to step aside and make time for joy. So I sometimes go down a private eye rabbit hole where I'm desperate to write about something and get it right and get the facts right. And I find it interesting and engaging, but it's not particularly joyful. And then my brain says to me, hey, I've had enough of serious truth seeking. I need to go and see a butterfly or feel the damp snout of my Labrador against my thigh or do something silly and meaningless, but it's in the moment. So it is important, but I think we forget how important it is. So I often say to patients, try and have 5 portions of fun a day. You need your 5 portions of fruit and veg, but try and add in 5 portions of fun. And if they're like my patients and they have severe fatigue, these are often little things that give you joy and meaning and purpose in your life. And try and have a bit of variety. So try and do different things. And it can just be sitting under a tree. It can be staring at a spring flower coming through. It can be a fairly simple thing.
Yep.
But I think those 5 portions of fun or joy a day are really, really important.
Thank you, because I was going to ask the other question that came to mind as you were speaking was, can we train ourselves to be more joyful? And again, from what you've been saying, that's actually that's one of the things you prescribe, actually.
You do. I mean, I do. I think gratitude is important to joy. So people generally who put their mind to bed at night and have gratitude for the good things in their life rather than focus on the tough things. I mean, yes, the tough things are there, but that sense of gratitude, they call it an attitude of gratitude, actually is quite important. I also talk about the daily joys of health, which I suspect you've heard of. So I use the clangers because I used to love the clangers.
Yes.
And
I remember them well.
they were our first children's colour TV program, but rather spookily, clangers is also an acronym for what I call the joys of health. So the things that we as humans do to be joyful and happy and healthy. So I think joy and health often go hand in hand.
Yep.
And clangers stands for connect, learn, be active, notice, give back, eat well, relax, sleep. Connect, learn, be active, notice, give back, eat well, relax, sleep. Now, the point is that this isn't telling you exactly what you have to do. Your clangers will look very different to my clangers. Who you choose to connect with, what you find interesting to learn, what gives you pleasure and purpose in life, etc. However, the general framework of healthy joys is similar for everyone. So, and it doesn't matter if you don't manage them all. You don't beat yourself up if you only manage 5 of your 8 clangers. But the point is, we know, if you're sleep deprived or you're eating ultra processed sugary gunk and all that sort of thing, that affects your ability to feel joy, I think. So actually paying attention to the thing, and it's not nanny state, it's not telling you what you can't do, it's saying actually try and do your clangers, and if all else fails, get outside. I think that's really important, that most joy is experienced outdoors in green space, connecting with nature, and we're not always very good at that. We sit in our little dark boxes. Absurd, in the lockdown people were told that they couldn't go outdoors. You should go outdoors as much as you want, because the virus is very hard to catch outdoors, and the beauty of life and joy is outdoors. So shutting people away in their little boxes made their lives much less joyless. So if you're stuck and your brain is in a bit of a negative mindset, get outdoors.
Fantastic, Phil. This is great. So connect with the clangers.
Yeah.
Remember your gratitude and self-compassion. Remember to go outdoors.
Outdoors, and remember compassion to others. So I often say, particularly to teenagers who are very obsessed with themselves and staring at their screen and their TikTok and their constant comparison on Instagram, just go and volunteer, go and care in a care home, go and look after some dementias patients and become their friend. And it's really interesting how caring for other people puts you in a mindset of joy. There is an absolute joy of singing a song to an old patient who you think is quite demented, and it suddenly connects something in their brain and they start crying or singing along or whatever. I mean, there are moments of joy to be had. And I think the biggest gains are when we bring joy to other people. So if you're stuck with what to do with your life, go and volunteer for people who are worse off than you are, and you'll soon realize what joy is.
Well, what a perfect place to end this conversation, Phil.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you're amazingly busy. Look forward to seeing you again in person sometime.
Yes, I hope so. Not too long, I hope, Joe. Thanks for that.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.